Thank you all for calling in and joining us for our webinar. Heather Potson, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Johan Soderstrom.
Hello, everyone.
And this week is going to be talking about Specops Deploy OS Advanced Techniques. So Johan and I are just back last week. We were in Portugal together. We saw each other for the first time in person in almost 2 years. We had a company-wide meeting. So it's kind of odd being away from you again. It was nice when we had our time together, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Fantastic weather also. So
it was nice. But really excited for this week. And I think this is Johan had a lot of great ideas that we're going to be sharing with you, and some things that you might not normally know about deploying some of the technology. So let's get started and introduce ourselves for those who haven't been on before. I am Heather Potson, one of the product specialists. Been working in infrastructure for a long time. For those of you who have been attending, I'm not going to bore you with some of the same facts. So something new about me. In addition to my hobbies, I enjoy following Formula One racing. And also, I enjoy beluga whales.
Nice.
Yeah, it's got to switch it up.
So my name is Johan Soderstrom. I have worked for 15 years with deployment, and also a product specialist at Specops. And I love travel to countries. Portugal was really nice. And as you can see on my picture, I love food and wine, and a little bit about motorcycling. I love Formula One also, Heather.
Yes, and we actually enjoyed a lot of food and wine last week together. So, all right, the series. So those of you who have been following us, you've seen that our list on the series, it's growing. So we started, this is our 4th week we're doing it, and we added 2 more sessions. So after we have our upgrading week in 2 weeks, we're going to actually do a session on capturing with Deploy OS. And then we added one called Rohan's Top 10. So customers out there in the US or North America, you might know Rohan. He is our lead support guy, and he's going to be joining us along with his counterpart in Europe to talk about the top 10 deploy support cases that we get. So I think that's going to be a really fun week. So hopefully you all keep continuing calling in and being a part of the series with us. So today's agenda, a little bit different. We're not going to be going through a lot of slides, or actually we're not really going to have many more slides after this one, but it's going to be a lot of demonstrations, and Johan's going to be driving through his environment. We're going to talk about the MDT deployment workbench. We're going to go into WDS, and then we're going to talk about the custom MDT properties that you see in Deploy, and then we're also going to have a discussion on boot images. Then, of course, plenty of time for questions and answers. So if any questions pop in your head as we're going through this, type them in, and we will address everything at the end. Questions really help make these webinars useful for everyone, so please ask away. So let's get started, Johan.
Okay. So can you see my screen, Heather?
Yes, I can. It looks great.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a very common scenario when you are a first-time customer with Specops and you open up you've been asked to open up the MDT workbench and open it up, and it will be empty. So I'm going to show you this. This is very, very useful to know which folder you're going to open up. So we're going to open up a deployment share, and in this case, we're going to my D drive, Specops Deploy, and make sure you open up the deployment repository, not the deployment share.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
I was going to say, you go, Johan.
If you don't do this and you make a change and you do a publish, you will actually overwrite your changes. So if you want to test something, you can actually mount the deployment share and do the changes in there. And if it fails, you can just publish, and the repository will overwrite the deployment share. So you can do it either way, but in this scenario, we're just going to talk about the deployment repository for everyone, so we don't do anything wrong here. Also, if you have problems with your boot images in your deployment solution, you have taken away network hard drivers, and something seems to be a little bit fishy around your boot image. Sometimes you will be asked by the support to actually regenerate your boot image. So to do that, you need to actually mount your deployment repository. So what you do to do that, to regenerate your boot image, all you have to do is this. And I will not do that, but this completely regenerate the boot image. I'm gonna make your boot image go away, and the system will actually rebuild the boot image for you. And when this guide is finished, the wizard is finished, and everything is done, go into your OS admin tool and publish again, and you will have new boot image fresh. And you can also look at the dates in the deployment server. I can show you the dates in the WDS later on.
Just know sometimes that does take, I found it takes sometimes an hour or more, depending upon how many drivers that you have in there.
Yeah, don't do that if you don't have time. You can do it before lunch, or go out, have some lunch, and come back, and it will be done. But it's a very good tool to do, because sometimes the boot image will be destroyed in some way. Certain antivirus also actually make the building of the boot image wrong. So sometimes that disturbs this boot image creation. So sometimes you have to disable or make sure that your antivirus doesn't interfere with the boot image regeneration, and then you can regenerate the boot image and it will be fine. Okay, so first we're going to talk about, Heather? Is it the drivers maybe?
Yeah, let's take a look at that before we jump into more about the boot image and boot drivers.
Okay, cool. So first I want to introduce you to a very little tool that is a very, very good tool. It's called Test Driver Lookup for computers. We have customers having this solution for many, many years, and they have never seen this little button. So I'm going to introduce that to you all, guys. I will do a search for a computer name, and in this case, it's called Foxtrot 02. It's find that machine and what operating system are you going to deploy. Let's say I'm going to choose Windows 7. And as you can see here, it's all empty under driver folder path. That shouldn't be empty, because then you haven't added any make and models in this tool. So what we're going to do now is actually create that. So we do the same request. So Heather, do you know what type of technology we are actually asking the computer to say? What make are you?
See, I'm getting quizzed. WMI technology.
Perfect. So this is actually why this is so important to do this. You can do it manually by doing this, and you can write it manually. But if you write it down wrong and you do this test driver lookup, you will actually miss that make. So it's very important to get it right.
Yes, Johan, I can't tell you how many times I have customers that say, my drivers aren't installing. And it's because, like you see there, Dell Inc. is the proper WMI name for a Dell, and they just manually type in Dell. So this is why we want to take the time to show you how to do this correctly, because it's extremely important to get this right to be successful.
And also, we want to do a model also for that Microsoft machine. And it says it's a virtual machine. That's correct. And also, this is a very common scenario that people tend to forget about operating system, because drivers is very native for different operating systems. So we also need to add operating system under here.
Now, Johan, though, that's okay for both 32 and 64-bit to put in the same folder?
Yes. In MDT, you don't have any 32 or 64-bit.
64-bit, you just have an OS.
So it's make, model, OS. So in here now, you can actually import your drivers. So if you have a cab file for that model, you can put it in here and it will be imported. And after that, you need to remember to publish. Very, very important. Otherwise, it only is going to be the driver repository, the repository that will have the drivers for that model. So you need to publish, and then the deployment share will going to have it. So the deployment share is the one that the clients talk to. Cool. So a little bit around advanced techniques around boot images, Heather.
Yeah, no, this one's exciting because I know I've seen this become really helpful, especially when you have people deploying Windows 7.
Exactly. So when you are using a deployment system, it will actually be newer version of the things that we are relied on, so like ADK and MDT. So for each generation of ADK, you will actually have a new version of boot image. In this case, the latest and greatest from Microsoft right now is actually 8.1. Next version will be, of course, Windows 10. So the boot image right now is 8.1. And if you are going to install a Windows 7 machine, the machine will still be using a boot image with Windows 8.1 on it, and then the drivers for Windows 7 needs to be downloaded to the machine during the installation. So that can cause you problems in the long run if you have used Vista, that was MDT 2010 thing, and then today it's 8.1. So you can actually have a lot of old drivers that you're never going to use for the boot image, because in an MDT solution, we'll actually take all the network card drivers and storage drivers from all the models and put it into the boot image. Okay, so we will show you guys how easy it is to actually create just a boot image that is just containing 8.1 images, drivers, not Windows 7, Vista, XP, or whatever you had in the past. So what I have to do now first is actually create a child folder. So you can create this one and call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it WinPE because that's what Microsoft is calling this. Also, I'm going to create operating system folder. And in this case, because the boot image today is 8.1, there you have it. Okay, so if you're going to Pixie boot the machine now, and you will have, you don't be able to reach the server because you don't have any drivers for the boot image, just add the drivers for that model for 8.1 into this folder, publish, and you will be able to Pixie and deploy a machine. In that case, the boot image will be a lot smaller and it will not colliding with any old drivers. But we're not there yet. This is just what we're going to do with this solution. So first of all, we need to create that WinPE and 8.1 folder. And now we go back to the deployment workbench. As you can see here, out-of-the-box drivers in MDT, we have created that for you.
Now, Johan, that was created here in MDT because we created in the Deploy OS admin console. So when we use that GUI interface, it does write to everything in MDT underneath, right?
Exactly. So that's why it's so important that you mount the deployment repository.
Yes, because if you do the share, all your work's going to go away, or you won't see it.
Exactly. So it's very important that you understand the deployment repository versus deployment share. So first of all, we're going to do a new selection profile. And I'm going to call that WinPE also. So I will actually use my WinPE folder structure that I created. So now, if I take properties on this one, I can see actually that it's going to use a folder called 8.1. Okay. So in the long run, if you're thinking of if we are going to upgrade the deployment solution to be able to do Windows 10, then the boot image will be Windows 10. Then you can add that into this and add new drivers for that for the future. So it's very easy to separate old versions versus new versions with this technique. Okay, so we're not done yet. We have just created what we call the selection profile for this. So the boot image now is actually up here under a tab called Windows PE. And as you can see here, this is a standard installation with MDT. It's going to use a selection profile called All Drivers and Packages. And if you're going to go back here and actually go into All Drivers and Packages, you're going to see that this profile will use all the drivers for all the models in here. So if you have 100 models of similar hardware, you're going to have the same driver 100 times maybe, or at least 50 times or 20 times. And if you add that to the boot images, that will cause problem with the boot images. Sometimes that's going to collide with each other. So instead of doing that, we're going to do like this instead. So we go back to Windows PE in here. As you can see here, I can choose platform. So we start with 32-bit platform. I'm going to choose my newly created profile, WinPE, for 32-bit and 64-bit. Like that. So if I have any problems now with my boot image, I have to add the 8.1 driver to that folder structure in OS Deploy. So if I buy a new laptop with the latest and greatest from Intel, and it's not able to connect to the deployment server because it's lacking of a network driver, download it, import it in here, publish, and you're good to go. What do you think about that, Heather? Easy?
I think that's neat. Yes, easy. And for all of you watching out here, we do have a blog article that has all of these steps outlined. So we'll make sure that that gets sent out to all the attendees. So if you didn't get all that, because I know there's a lot of steps, we'll make sure you do get the step-by-step ways of doing this, because it's helpful. A lot of times, a lot of my customers, Johan, say to me that, well, I'm deploying Windows 10, but when it reboots, they're like, it's an 8.1 screen comes up, and that's because of the boot image, and then hence why it's really nice that you could separate the drivers, use the 8.1 driver for the boot image, but then you could put your Windows 7 drivers under your make and model computer, so Windows will get the proper driver. So I like it.
Yeah, it's when you figure it out, when you have played around a little bit with MDT and OS Deploy, and when you feel comfortable about it, it's very easy to understand this. So just think of an OS deployment in 2 steps. First, you have the boot step, the boot image, and then you have the installation step with the operating system you're going to have. So divide that 2 part with different. So it's very, very, very simple to understand in the long run if you do that. Don't complicate things if you don't have to.
Yeah, that's why we want to keep it simple.
Keep it simple, absolutely. Okay, what are we going to talk about now? Maybe a little bit around WDS?
Yes, definitely, because this is the other area where I find a lot of my customers ask me about multicasting.
Multicasting, what's that? Yeah. You have 2 techniques. One technique called unicast or unicasting. That's an old technique that was invented many, many years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And that's great technology. But what happens is if you're going to install 100 machines at the same time, you will actually, your network will drown in network traffic and you will block everything to talk to on the network. So that's why you're going to struggle. You're going to try to reach for the multicast thing. And so the difference between a unicast string and a multicast string is that the unicast thing is only per computer. So if you have 100 machines at the same time, you will have 100 streams of unicast. With a multicast stream, if you're going to deploy 100 machines at the same time, we'll only have one stream, but it's just going to be longer because they're going to start at different times. They're not going to start at the same time. So you can it will just hook up into that stream. So if I'm the first machine has been running for a couple of minutes and it's going to go to 13%, next machine that's going to connect to that string will start on 13% and then go to the end and do the first percent that it missed. So that will make your infrastructure not, overflowing with network traffic. So multicast is a really cool technique and feature if you are able to do it. So Heather, if you're not able to do multicast in your network environment, what can you do to prevent that?
You could change some of the properties here. Does it raise the number there? Not the way I used to do it until you set me straight.
Yeah, you can actually remove stuff in here to actually prevent the WDS to ever doing multicast. But if you're going to upgrade the deployment server, if you have a new version of OS Deploy, then you will actually rewrite that property. So you have to, every time you have to remember to, okay, I have upgraded Specops, then go in here and remove. So instead of doing that, we have something called 5.9 solution, okay? So take properties of your deployment server. So this is per deployment server, okay? So you can have different sites with different network equipment. On that site, it's going to work with the multicast. On the other side, it will not work. So you can actually test this and make sure everything works as you want to. So if you have a site that's not going to work very well with multicast because it's going very, very slow, then you can actually set this little thing to automatically disconnect and put in 5 nines in here. What that means, it actually is a threshold. So that's 99.999 megabyte per second. That means almost a gigabit of speed, okay? And no deployment solution or no client will ever come up to that threshold. So instead of trying for multicast, it will actually drop from multicast to unicast. So that's a very good recommendation if you have problems with multicast in your environment. Take a threshold that you think is very good. Make sure you understand this is in kilobyte, not kilobit. Okay, so it's byte. It's very you higher number, the harder you get to it. Lower number, easier it is going to be to get multicast. Okay, so I have a couple of customers using this, and they set like 5,000 or 10,000, and then if they don't get to that, because this is hardware dependence also, Heather. So if you have a very old laptop, maybe that is not able to do that, and it will drop to unicast, and everything will go fine. And also, when you introduce a deployment solution to a customer, sometimes they have network equipment that's not capable of having big packages. So sometimes you need to tweak the block size of the packaging of the TFTP. So for instance, if you have a HP network equipment environment, you have to put this to half of meg, because in this case we have a 2012 R2 server. They want to push out 1.5 meg of packages, block size packages, and HP switches doesn't like that. So if you drop this, it will be working a lot. It will work beautiful with this setting. So, but as you can see here in this environment, we don't have to do that. So TFTP is the one people sometimes, when we introduce a deployment solution to a customer, you need to change that, or the multicast stuff, that's a really, really good feature to know about.
Yeah, the multicast I find with my customers is that's probably one of the only reasons they would pop into WDS is to go from multicast or unicast or tweak that.
Yeah, and the beauty with this solution is that if you upgrade it now, you don't have to remember this. You can just upgrade Specops and we will not do anything with these settings. So if you have it as you want it to, now we are only going to use unicast, then it will always be like this until you come here and change it, of course.
Of course. So why don't we talk about the custom MDT properties?
Okay. So what is custom MDT properties, Heather? Can you explain that?
Sure. Well, it's a way that, and you could do it based on your Deploy OS group policy, that you can add some properties to MDT just by editing the tab in the policy, and to trying to think of my word, but just to add a property and to have something accomplished, such as if you want your optimal screen resolution. A lot of times people say, why is my screen shrunk down? So we could just pop that right here into a custom property, and this will be inserted into your OS build. Is that the right way?
Yeah.
Is that the right way to describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is exactly what you can do with an MDT. That's why it's called MDT Properties. This is an MDT deployment solution, and we are actually doing this very nice in the GUI for you guys, so you don't have to change in a ini file to do all these changes. So all you have to do is actually just Googling what you can change for custom settings.ini. That's the ini file, and you can actually add these variables in here. So if you add X resolution equals 1 and Y resolution equals 1, we're going to trick the system. So of course we cannot have resolution 1 by 1 because that will just be a big blob on your screen. So what happened is that the driver that you have imported and injected to the system will actually tell the hardware, okay, let's see what's the optimal resolution for you. So if you have an old laptop with 4:3 resolution, it will be 4:3. If you have a newer laptop with a wider solution, then that will also, with 16:9 or whatever it's called, that will also be stretched like that. So that's really awesome, instead of a call from a user saying, oh, I have black things on the sides on my screen, can you try to help me out? And you have to remove them and stretch the screen. So
and
that's
I know
really...
a few years ago, Deploy did not actually have the custom MDT properties. So my customers would actually have to go in and create a task sequence or modify task sequence in MDT to do this, which a lot of times you really don't want to go and play in there because that's when you can start breaking things. So I think it's wonderful that we have this tab right in the product, and boom, 2 little settings there and you're done.
Exactly, but that's exactly what we did because in MDT, it's hard-coded 1024-768 resolution, so it was hard-coded in. So we remove that. That equals like this. It just tries to talk to each other. So that it's a driver and a hardware that will okay, this is the best resolutions for us. So it's exactly the same, but we do it in a much nicer way. What else can we do here, Heather?
Well, those of you who follow the blog might see they can actually do your .NET in there, because we put an article up last week on that.
Absolutely. So everyone can see that it says skip roles yes, OS features netfx 3, and then you have a Windows source variable. And if you just add that SXS folder to that share, you're good to go. You will actually be able to have .NET old on an 8.1 image, and then you can do a capture, and you don't have to worry about .NET old, because you know that all applications today, they tend to takes time to have them to up and running on the latest .NET version. So that's why sometimes it's good to have the old .NET framework also on a newer computer.
Yep.
What else can you do here?
One things I like to do is the IE homepage.
Homepage, that's a good
Can you
one.
do that? Because I know a lot of times some companies they don't want to lock it down through group policy, but they still want their homepage coming up. And just as simple as that.
Very simple. So the tons of example that you can do, but this is a little bit what I want to show you with this webinar, that you can do small things that will make ton of difference in your deployment solution.
Definitely. Thank you. I learned something too. So anyway, this is my favorite time, questions and answers. So whatever questions that you have, please start typing them in. We're going to go through the list and answer everything that we have. We did have one come in a little bit ago when we were talking about drivers. And Ryan's asking, what happens if you don't have a cab file? If you can only get on the website, download your drivers by EXE, so what would you do there? What's your suggestion, Johan? Because I know for me, usually we have to extract the EXEs out and get the INF files to import. Would you have a better way of doing that?
You mean with drivers? If you have
just regular drivers, because like you know how Dell gives you the cab file, but I don't believe like HP might not, or Lenovo, you might not get that whole cab file with the drivers.
No, what you have to do is you have to extract the exe file to a folder structure so you can actually import them. So an exe file is not possible to import, but a cab file is. So Dell, they do it wonderful. Sometimes other vendors doesn't do it.
Yeah, but one thing I want to say about the cab file, Yona, I don't know what your thought is. I sometimes find out it puts too much in there, and then there's just drivers you might not need. Or do you still think more drivers the better?
No, if you think of this, if you are in a hurry, you have 10 computers that needs to get out, then I would use the cab file. It's a very, very good solution. But if you are, a little bit have more time to do this, you can extract the cab file and actually make sure that you get exact, because they are shipping more drivers than you need in a cab file, because you have revisions of that model. So, model A, then you maybe have 3 revisions. You have revision 1, 2, and 3. So maybe you just have revision 3 machines. Then you can actually just pick those drivers you want to and import them to that model structure, because you don't have any revision 1 or 2, because you have the latest and greatest of that model. So absolutely, you can actually extract cabs and do whatever you want. But if you have in a hurry, push the cab in.
Perfect. Thank you. And then talking about drivers also, we have a question coming in, wanting to know if we can import drivers from a computer. I don't think that's not the recommended way to do that. I would think it's better to go from the manufacturer.
Yeah, it's like, don't take anything from computers, because if you have anything on a computer, that driver will be old. It's the same thing when you do a capture of an operating system. If you do a capture today, Microsoft will release patches tomorrow or next week. So just exactly when you do it, it will be old. So it's better to take the newest thing that you have from the vendor, push it out there, extract it, put it in there. So my recommendation when you do this is actually deploy the machine first and look for what's missing, and then add those drivers so you don't end up having gigabytes of data, worthless data, because drivers tend to be really, really big on newer machines. So modern machines have maybe a gig or 2 gig of drivers. So instead of having that on 10 models, add them, extract them, just push in the right drivers, exactly what you need. That's my less is more. That's my motto.
Sounds good. Oh, one's coming in about WDS. So they say in the past that they turned off multicast by deleting that Specops object in WDS. What do they do if they want to get that back and do it with the 5.9 rule that you showed us today? That one. Good.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a very common scenario that you tend to be a little bit more educational with time. So when you start to understand that, oh, you can do this in a smarter way. So how do you repair that little thing without upgrading, wait for the next upgrade of OS Deploy? All you have to do is actually reinstall that deployment server. So just in OS Deploy, say reinstall a new deployment server, point to the same deployment server that you want to repair, and off you go. And publish, of course. Then it's done.
And back in business.
We are back in business in no time.
All right. We have someone asking about WDS. Can you install that on a DC? Because I like to run all of my products for Specops on a domain controller. What happens when you come to the prerequisites for this?
Yes, it's doable, but it's not recommendable. You on a DC, you usually have your DHCP, and that will actually collide with your WDS server, because that will actually introduce itself in AD as a DHCP server. So you have to do a lot of tweaks for the WDS server to actually work on a DHCP server. So it's not recommendable, but it's doable. So you have to, it will take like 20-30 minutes extra fiddling around with stuff, and absolutely it's doable, but it's not recommendable.
All right, thank you. And then we have one last question coming in. I noticed when you were showing us the MDT Custom Properties, it was in a group policy object. I usually just use a default policy. What's the difference?
Oh, yeah, what's the difference? Yeah, you cannot do everything with a default policy. So a small customer introducing with OS Deploy, it will probably work because they will always do the Pixie server stuff, the Pixie reboot stuff. But as all new old customer with Specops knew that we can use something called default reinstallation. That means we have a little client-side extension on the computer. So if you right-click on a computer and say, I'm going to reinstall this machine, but I'm gonna save user data, then we're going to use our little client-side extension that actually will extract or take the boot image down to the machine and reboot the machine and do the reinstallation, and also save the user data for that machine and take it back when it's installed. So you miss that if you're just using the default policy. So our recommendation is use group policies instead for the default policy. The default policy is just there if you are adding a computer somewhere that where you don't have any group policy for OS Deploy, then you will anyway get a operating system on that machine.
For that. Definitely. That's what I always try to say, the policy just from the get-go. I said, let's create that and then use the default policy for the fallback. So
absolutely, and you can actually see the benefit also. You can actually point to another deployment server. No, I'm not going to use the deployment server B. I want to use deployment server A for this site or whatever. Then you can do that in the group policy. You cannot do that in a default policy.
perfect. Well, thank you. That's the last question that we had coming in today. I know there are a few people that did jump in after we got started. This is being recorded, and it will be the video on the website. So if you do want to catch up what you didn't see in the beginning, you can come back and see it again. Or if you want to try anything in your own environment and walk through again, it will be available. 2 weeks, we have another one coming up. Johan, can you flip the slide? So we will have upgrading with Deploy OS on September 17th. So there's the link to register if you haven't. Hope you all join us again. This has been great. I know I'm having a lot of fun doing this series, and I know, Johan, you have to be having fun.
Yeah, this is fun. This is fun stuff.
So thank you for joining us. And everyone, if you're in the North America, enjoy your holiday weekend, your holiday on Monday. Take care.
Take care. Bye.